Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webcast. My name is Christine Dorsey Davis. I'm the Executive Director of the Ohio chapter of the American Planning Association, and I am your webcast moderator. Today is Friday, May 9th, and we will hear Envisioning Sprawl Repair, lessons from the 2025 Student Planning and Design Competition. This is an exciting one. I've been looking forward to this one. For questions related to technical things like sound or seeing slides, you can type your questions into the chat box or the Q&A box, and I'll do my best to answer those. For your content questions related to the presentation, again, just type those in the Q&A box, and we'll get to those at the end of the presentation during the Q&A. I will ask, it helps me if when you're asking your question, you tell me who it is that you want to answer the question. It just helps me field through all of the questions, but we will get to those at the end during the Q&A. Coming up on your screen is a list of our sponsoring 2025 consortium members. These are made up of our APA chapters and divisions. Thanks to all those participating sponsors for making these webcasts possible and free to members. Today, we are sponsored by a longtime partner of the webcast series, the Urban Design and Preservation Division. So thank you for joining us today and kind of bringing us this presentation from NPC. Up on your screen is a list of our next 4 webinars that are available for you to register for. You can register for these and all of our upcoming sessions on our website, ohioplanning.org/planning webcast. We're actually booking now through the end of the summer, so make sure you check back so that you can register for all of these great upcoming sessions. We are approved for 1.5 CM credits. So for my AICP friends needing to log credits, head over to planning.org, log into your My APA account. From there, you can search by today's title or event number, both of which can be found on our webcast website, ohioplanning.org/planning webcast. If you're on social media, be sure to like us on Facebook. That's where I post any important date or time changes, when new sessions are available for you to register for, and of course, our weekly What's on Tap for Friday. We record all of our sessions. We post them onto our YouTube channel. So head over to YouTube, type in Planning Webcast, and our channel will pop up along with our well over 500 session recordings, all available to you for free. So be sure to subscribe to our channel so you get notified when a new session recording has been uploaded. Last thing new for this year, we have an email list. I promise I send exactly 1 email a month at the top of each month, letting you know what sessions are available for you to register for and what sessions are coming up for the month. So you can click the QR code, or again, just head over to our website, and at the very top of the page, you'll have an option to just type in your email address, and then you'll start getting that only 1 email a month from me reminding you of what sessions are available to register. That's the end of my housekeeping items. Again, if you have questions for our panelists, type those in the Q&A box. We'll get to those at the end during the Q&A. And with that, Chris with a K, I'm turning it over to you.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Welcome, everybody. Can you see it, Christine?
Looks good.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you very much, Christine. We always enjoy your webinars, and I've been on a couple of them, and this is a great venue, so thank you. My name is Chris Kreider, and I am the chair of the Urban Design and Preservation Division. During my day job, I work for Arlington County in Virginia, right across the river from the Potomac. We're going to first do a round of introductions, talk about our goals for the day, and then look at some of the exciting work that the students did, followed by work that one of our jurors, Chris Zomp, did as well, and really focus on some urban design, sort of what are the basics, and then also dive a little deeper into some of the neighborhood context issue and what sprawl repair is all about. So I'm going to advance my slide here. So let's start with introductions. Chris, do you want to go first?
Sure. Thank you, Chris with the K. I am Chris with the C. As Chris mentioned, I was one of the jurors at the final presentations at NPC 2025. I'm also the work program coordinator for the design competition and a few other programs that we have going on at the Urban Design and Preservation Division. And in my day job, I'm practice area leader for cities and urban design at Gensler, based in Washington, D.C. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Let's go to Matt.
Hi, I'm Matt Thibodeau. I'm currently a graduate student in urban planning at the Harvard Graduate School of Design.
And I'm Cameron Hall. I'm also a student pursuing my Master's of Urban Planning at the Harvard Graduate School of Design.
Oliver.
Hi, everyone. I'm Oliver Oglesby, also at Harvard, pursuing dual degrees in urban planning and landscape architecture.
And Kunth.
Hey everyone, my name is Kunt Shah. I graduated as an architect in 2019, and tomorrow I graduate as an urban designer from UT Austin.
Awesome, awesome. And last but not least, Despina.
Hey everyone, I'm Despina Tesmadzakos. I'm also in the urban design, but also the community regional planning program here at UT Austin, and I'm also graduating tomorrow. So this is a great opportunity to give a last little presentation on this great competition entry.
Excellent. What's so great, I'm so grateful for you guys. I know this is a busy time of year for students. You can't wait to get done. So thank you for your time today. Let's go ahead and get started. So our goals for today is not knowing who the audience is. I want to kind of hit some sort of fundamentals around urban design. We're going to see some work from two of our three SPDC finalists, and they're going to reflect on some key prompts that we're looking at in terms of urban form, environmental justice, and social healing, as well as looking at sort of how do we create this focused design that can repair the past, largely through engineered solutions in the past, and looking to steward healthier environments. We'd also like to provide you with some ideas. This is an idea sharing session, and we want to hear your ideas as well. And finally, if you're a student joining us, we would love to see you next year at our conference in Detroit. So what is urban? When you think about sprawl, let's think about what isn't sprawl, right? So we all see this as kind of an urban environment, but what's also important is this is also urban. Because urban and urban design is really about the spaces that are created, about the clustering of buildings and objects to create a sense of space. And it's that organization that really is what is the foundation of trying to repair some of the mismanagement. So what isn't urban? This is what we see. We see storefront-like facades with a large garage. We see houses dominated by garage doors and very little character. So these are the types of things and types of environments we've all been exposed to. So what is urban design? First of all, it's multidisciplinary. You've got civil, you've got architecture, you've got landscape architecture, you've got stormwater management. All of these elements really come into play. Transportation plays a huge role. So, and we're really focused on creating complete networks, whether they're vehicular, hydrological, environmental, and one of the key things that inspires us all is really trying to create meaningful spaces, a sense of place, if you will. And we've all been there. We've all seen that. And we're like, well, what are the tools to make that happen? And we look primarily at the space between the buildings. The buildings become the fabric by which we activate. And finally, we look at all of these within the social, cultural, and economic elements of the urban environment. Now, as I mentioned, I work in Arlington. Arlington was an early example of trying to manage sprawl. In the mid-70s, WMATA wanted to put the metro underneath or in between the travel lanes of I-66. The county pushed back, and this is Clarendon Boulevard, and there's the Washington Monument. And as you can see, it looked a lot like the sprawl that we see all around the country. What we did was through incentive zoning, we've concentrated all of our development along Metro Corridor. So when it was undergrounded under Clarendon Boulevard, we've managed to have exponential growth while the vehicle on Clarendon Boulevard was 30,000 vehicles a day 30 years ago. It's less than that today, yet we have 6 times the density. So it really demonstrates that good planning and good urban form can be successful. The other thing that we have to understand is that sprawl is just not large, sprawling subdivisions. It's actually at a very micro level oftentimes. So the suburban reality of creating these spaceless architecture, blank walls, overhead pedestrian bridges, lack of street trees, one-way streets. All of these are factors in what have created a car culture. So what we're trying to look at are opportunities, and this is a really exciting time because of the interest in multimodal design and really taking back the street from the car is opening up so many other opportunities such as parklets, separated bikeways. The other thing that we're seeing too is encouraging biophilic design. In these urban environments, it's very important for people to be connected to nature. So how do our buildings and our places reinforce that connection? And then finally, looking at opportunities that present themselves for placemaking. This is a little pop-up space that we created in our county parking lot that is now actually today is going under a refresh. And this is the kind of environments that are very inexpensive but become great places. So with that, I'd like to sort of talk about the student planning competition. And this year, the host city of Denver was our site. But before I do that, I do want to thank the jurors. So we had two juries. One, we had an initial jury, and these are primarily urban design and preservation division members. And then we had a final jury that consisted of planning directors and leaders within the urban design field. These folks were very instrumental because we had over, I think, about 25 final submittals. And from the initial jury, we were tasked with selecting 3. And so the teams that did submit are listed here. If some of you are online, thank you again. We hope that you'll continue to encourage your teammates, your fellow students to enter the competition. But we had a lot of it actually took us over 4 hours to select the finalists because of the quality of the work. As we did select the finalists, we also identified, the jury identified 4 other teams that did not make the final cut, but really exemplified the notions that we had talked about in terms of the prompt, looking at ecological design, equity, cultural preservation, and finally, overall design excellence. And that came from our first international team from Warsaw, Poland. So we're very excited to be expanding beyond our shores. And then finally, and importantly, we had 3 finalists, 2 of which are here today. So 5280 Planning Collective from the Graduate School of Design, UDP Collective from University of Texas at Austin, and finally the Planning Panthers from University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee. So just to sort of set the tone, this was the site. This is the intersection of Colfax and Federal in the just west of downtown Denver, which you can see. It's also very close to Mile High Stadium. As you can tell, the site is surrounded by intact neighborhoods. When this cloverleaf was built, it blasted through and totally disrupted the lives and businesses of several hundred people who were displaced. And so you can see this image here of what it used to be like. And what the city of Denver would like to do is to bring this interchange down to grade so that it's a true intersection. So why did Denver like this site for us to study? Because they were sort of in the phase 1 of redeveloping this site, also looking at a master plan for the Mile High Stadium area. And they were focused on 3 major areas: mobility, environmental concerns, and land use and economics to help revitalize this area and also mitigate the investment impact of what had happened in this past with the involuntary displacement. So this black border was I think it was about a 50-acre site. And importantly, this is the 4th year that we've hosted the competition. And this year, we really wanted the students to look at the context. So looking at that framework area and understanding how connections can be made is really important to the overall stitching back together the community that had once been there. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to our friends from Harvard. Take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here, and thanks again to Chris and Chris for the invitation. So I'm Matt. I'm joined by my teammates Cameron and Oliver. Like we said, we're currently students at the Harvard GSD, and we also worked with other teammates, Chris and Lindsay, who weren't able to make it today. So this is a brief excerpt from our proposal that we developed for the to this year's APA student competition, which we've named the Colfax Core. So our proposal reimagines the current Colfax Federal Interchange as a vibrant, transit-oriented urban center, a destination that's for neighbors and a home for new residents. This includes mixed income housing and a walkable public realm that includes a pedestrianized overpass and a park system centered around a new waterway.
Slide. We grounded our approach in 5 guiding principles: equity, connectivity, health, safety, and resiliency. These principles create a place where visitors are drawn to spend the day, but residents also feel supported enough to build their lives and put down roots. So for today's presentation, we'll be focusing on how urban form, equity, and environmental stewardship can accomplish sprawl repair.
Reconnecting surrounding neighborhoods, the Colfax Core is made up of 5 distinct character areas, each defined by their design and programming. Listening to community aspirations from prior engagement led by the West Colfax Bid, the City of Denver, and the Colorado Department of Transportation, our design reclaims the federal overpass and transforms it into a multi-level space designed to enhance public life. We named it the Corky Gonzalez Walk, honoring Denver's Chicano movement, which centered art, economic justice, and community participation. Here in the community core, we envision a colorful hub for cultural events, placemaking, and a rich urban experience that celebrates diversity. In another character area at the Health Hub, we have pharmacies and family healthcare, childcare and senior housing, which enable aging in place. And we also envision dedicated food retail, urban farming, and much more to make nutritious food more accessible in what is currently a food desert.
So our proposal creates a remarkably diverse program with thousands of apartments, including family-sized units, spaces for the community and new businesses, and new public amenities. Affordability is built in from the start, with both rental and home ownership options, including supportive and senior units. To integrate with low-density neighborhoods to the west, with the high-density Stadium District Master Plan to the east, we propose a gentle height gradient in the urban form that works with existing topography and also preserves views of both downtown Denver and the Rockies. This, with other urban design guidelines we set out, would ensure that any new development embeds into surrounding neighborhoods and creates a distinct new community core.
As displacement threatens West area communities, the Colfax Core centers cultural heritage and housing affordability. This equitable development seeks to mend the damage of urban renewal with over 1,000 affordable housing units, dedicated space for community-based organizations, and public art designed by local youth. We want to make sure that existing residents have access to the opportunity that this neighborhood creates. The Colfax Core also dovetails with Denver's game plan for a healthy city to increase accessibility to open green spaces, restoring tree coverage lost to road widening. Matt will get into this a bit later, but creating a new street grid and reconnecting the many neighborhoods around this site also connect neighbors with each other, with opportunities, and fosters equity in the environment.
And as stormwater flooding worsens with climate change, the Colfax Core builds long-term resilience through its open space network. Sloan's Greenway captures the former flood zone, filters runoff through riparian buffers, and restores habitats for native species like rosy finches, all by daylighting an undersized buried drainage way that's currently on site. Nature-based solutions like introducing biodiversity, LEED certified buildings, and minimizing auto dependency are simply smart planning moves that we incorporated. But beyond these strategies, we imagine a Colfax Core that builds resilience through true ecological stewardship, cultivating a deeper connection to the landscape and a sense of responsibility for the surrounding environment. And zooming out to the framework scale, which was really how we approached this project, we began by working with the landscape's natural advantages and vulnerabilities, from integrating nearby recreational amenities like Paco Sanchez Park to tackling threats like flooding and extreme heat. The Colfax framework as a whole creates the new Sloan's Greenway, which stitches together this open space network all the way from Sloan's Lake Park in the northwest, down to the South Platte River. Daylighting the drainage way upgrades this buried stormwater infrastructure into a new amenity inspired by regional Colorado ecologies. Green streets, tree planting, and cooling centers mitigate extreme heat, improve water quality, and beautify surrounding neighborhoods.
So we approach circulation with a multimodal mindset, how to enable walkability, expand transit access, and create new bike facilities without choking the necessary arterials of Federal and Colfax. Our framework plan enables an equitable transit-oriented development by returning a street grid to the site, pedestrianizing the Federal overpass, and which draws cues from Denver's 16th Street Mall. We shifted the new at-grade intersection west to embrace the topography, and we also extended RTD's bus rapid transit plans to Federal and Colfax, created dedicated bikeways and walkable connections to light rail and bus rapid transit. Building on Denver's complete street guidelines, we also proposed street redesigns that make trips more efficient, safe, and enjoyable for all road users. On that, our circulation plan also recenters Vision Zero. Drawing from Denver's safe system approach, our proposal separates transit lanes, maximizes bike infrastructure, creates pedestrian islands within medians, and lengthens crossing times. And that, is our little expert of the presentation. Just wanted to say thanks so much again to APA and to the judges for a really great experience this spring.
Okay, next up, our champion this year from the University of Texas at Austin.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you everyone else for joining and giving us this opportunity to share our project. We were a team of 5 students, 3 from the Community and Regional Planning and Urban Design program, and then 2 from the Core Urban Design program at UT Austin. Our project was titled Green Link Denver, which looked at possible ways of envisioning urban sprawl repair. We started by doing our own research on the historical context of West Denver, and we learned that what was once a vibrant neighborhood that had Latino communities, a Jewish community, and had an indigenous community before that, were all displaced by the rezoning in 1920 that allowed for industrial uses on the site. And then that was successively with the construction of the Colfax and Federal Boulevard that completed the process of fragmentation that has started in 1920. Right. Thank you. So the first step in our design was to do an asset mapping for the site, which categorized into 3 broader aspects that looked at major transportation networks, the blue-green network, and adjacent nodes and activity centers. What this helped us do was to analyze the site and the framework area and to come up with a list of potential aspects that we could leverage in the urban design and planning of the project. The major transportation networks basically looked at the existing public transit infrastructure that we had in our site and in the adjacencies of our site that we would then use to have multimodal transit options. The blue-green network did a study of the existing park and trail systems, the regional trail system in Denver, and also looked at floodplain analysis and urban heat island effect that is caused by the absence of tree coverage on site. And then the adjacent nodes looked at the stadium district plan, historical landmarks, the recreation centers, and then the identification of the site as a food desert, and then possible ways to mitigate that. And so the result of that was formulating our 4 guiding principles that we believe can be universally applied to urban sprawl and redevelopment projects. The first one was mobility and network, which basically looked at significantly reducing car dependency and providing options for public transport and biking and a safe pedestrian environment. We do that by first leveraging the existing rail station that we had and the bus stops that we had into multimodal transit hubs, and by designating specific street typologies from neighborhood street that cater to providing access to the more sort of local environments within the site, to larger regional connector streets and the mixed-use streets that would have multimodal options, dedicated bus and bike lanes. The BRT would run through that. All of these streets combined did the job of connecting the site with the larger context of Denver. And then internally within the site, in a 15-minute walkable neighborhood. The second factor here was the environmental sustainability. This was very important to us because the site had the challenge of its topography, which we thought was actually an opportunity to design a network of bioswales for flood mitigation that also overlapped with the floodplain analysis that we did early on. Uh, the overall idea over here was to have a northwest to southeast connection to the existing Lakewood Gulch Trail in terms of the storm water, and then put a bicycle highway that basically became the backbone and the Green Link, which became the title of our project, Green Link Denver. The third aspect here was social resilience, which talked about our takeaways from community engagement, about providing equity in affordable housing options, access to amenities in health, education, and food, and preserving and expanding local businesses and community assets. Uh, and so each of the street typologies talked about in mobility and connectivity, then started to have programs that related to the street typology that we had. And that in turn gave us the height and massing options that I will talk about shortly. The last aspect here was thriving economy. This was also a critical factor here because we did have the business district come in from the west and the downtown being almost at a biking distance from the site. And we felt like the site had the opportunity to have partnerships, not just within the site, but in different nodes and adjacencies within Denver, and how the site could then bring all of these together for economic development. The farmers market was also added here, that also tied into social resilience to mitigate the food desert that the site is currently. And so the site plan and the overlaying of these four strategies got us to um, the right got us to the land use plan, which envisioned an appropriately scaled development that had a taller intensity development to the east that's gradually stepped down towards the Green Link to become residential mixed-use neighborhoods to the west. The idea here was to have a vibrant mixed-use urban neighborhood that was walkable, uh, and had equal access and opportunities for diverse groups of people uh, living at Green Link Denver. And to help us understand how to actualize this project, we have Tess who will run us through some of our policy ideas.
Yeah. So thinking about implementation and phasing, we heavily relied on partnerships and funding and procurement strategies to help understand how in a project like this, we might actually be able to make it happen. So in phase one, we really envisioned creating a strong partnership with the US DOT and CDOT for the on-grade intersection specifically, additionally pursuing partnerships with educational institutions. Phase two, we hope to seek out private partnerships towards market rate units to increase housing density, but also build that base for funding. Phase three builds out on phase two with private partnerships, leveraging finances for those green initiatives and spaces, along with mixed use development. And then phase four, we're really able to focus on our equity principles, focusing on developing farmland and public and private ownership, as well as valuable land facing the stadium can be used to leverage those commercial hospitality and housing developments, which might bring in more money. And then on the table to the right, we've identified some of those local, state, and federal opportunities. We hoped to make this happen. So for instance, the local level, we have things like the Climate Protection Fund, Denver Dedicated Affordable Housing Fund, and Denver Food Resilience. And at the state level, we have things like the Revitalizing Main Street grants, Denver Enterprise Zones, and CDOA Small Food Business Recovery and Resilience grants, again, to help leverage our goals. And in the context of changing federal policy as well, we hope to utilize additional types of funding, such as private capital, philanthropy, partnerships such as with those surrounding schools, and foundation grants, as well as utilizing some other procurement models, such as community land trust models or cooperative housing models, to again kind of give that land back to the community. And then next slide. And this is just a culmination of some of the strategies we proposed. So this is hoping to capture how our project embraces a sense of community, rethinking the identities of environmental design, connectivity, social resiliency, and a thriving economy. So things such as complete and safe street typologies, centering sustainable systems and green space through our green link in the bioswales, pedestrianizing streets through day programming and activation, and activating storefronts through mixed-use density. We hope that these can all show the importance of reprioritizing the human scale, and giving back opportunity to communities that have historically been disconnected and auto-dominant, into a reparative link of connection opportunity. So this is just a snippet from our presentation, but we hope that you all enjoyed. And again, thank you to all the panels and jurors for helping make this happen and creating such a challenging but also great exercise for reimagining these types of sites.
Okay, thank you, Despina. Chris, you were one of the jurors, so you might also, as part of your presentation, share a little bit of how the jury sort of viewed the work that we just saw. So I'll turn it over to you and just tell me when you want me to advance to the next slide.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So I think I'm going to walk through a few projects that Gensler and I have been involved with here over the last few years that also echo some of these themes of sprawl repair that we've been talking about today. And I think it's important to note, we've just looked at a cloverleaf, which is a great example of a scar on our environment, on our urban fabric. But we're going to look at a mall repositioning and a redevelopment of a suburban mall site, and also what a highway can do. I think that these are all things that, Chris, if we go back to the way you framed up what's urban, what's not urban, these are all things that just disrupt the urban fabric in a variety of contexts. And as we, get involved with these projects, I think the theme that will really echo that we've heard from the Harvard team and from UT is connectivity and reestablishing and restitching the connectivity that used to be present in these neighborhoods, or if it never was, trying to forge that and create a new urban fabric, maybe where there wasn't one. So the first one, like I said, that we'll talk about today is a project in Norfolk, Virginia. I don't know if anyone in the audience today is familiar with that area or that part of the country, but we can flip to the next one, Chris. There was a project there. There was an old mall built in the 70s called Military Circle that was along Virginia Beach Boulevard, kind of on the way out to Virginia Beach. You can see the overview of the site here. It was about a 90-acre site of just the mall proper, kind of your typical mid-century mall. With the big box is on either end of it, and then kind of your double-loaded, double-height mall environment in the center. If you go to the next one, Chris, you can get a sense of where it was, what kind of used to be there. This site is interesting because it was a little bit outside of old Norfolk. I mean, Norfolk is a port town, right? It's been there for, 300 years. This area currently located was outside of that old development, which actually makes it a really interesting site today because a lot of that area that you see in the old engraving here, right, there's some flooding issues there, right? I mean, as we talk about sea level rise and how this whole area might change, in the next potentially 25, 30 to 50 years, this area where the mall was located is on higher ground, which actually made it a development priority for the city. You see a couple of pictures there below of the old mall and what it was like inside. It was really a source of pride for this community when it was built. This map, gives you a sense of where it is in relation to the coast and to the Chesapeake Bay, and really sits at this crossroads. They called it Hampton Roads for a reason, where all of those shipping lanes used to cross, back in the 18th and 19th centuries. But there is, an airport, there's a naval air station, there's, a few other ports all in this area, kind of Hampton Roads, Portsmouth, and Norfolk itself. So if we go to the next one, the way we looked at this mall then is, we have to go back into history and understand what was there, much like, all of the teams did, kind of uncovering the history of that site. And this was a place where there wasn't much really before the mall. It was literally a military road. It was made to get supplies and products from the factories and places where things were being made out to the ports and vice versa. Then came the mall, really in the suburban post-war expansion, where it became a destination. It's really where people, came. That's where people went. It was a place to go. But when we look at that in the future and start to think about really a diverse mix of uses and how we create community, we want to think about this as a place to be. So if we go to the next one. The existing mall, when we started working at it, we looked at whether or not any of these things could be preserved, any of the boxes. We looked at adaptive reuse strategies, but it just really wasn't going to be financially feasible. So once the Economic Development Authority had assembled the entire property, the mall was probably, I don't know, about 70% vacant when we actually started working with them. The idea of this kind of being a complete takedown and redevelopment came to fruition. You can go to the next one. The site was 89% impervious. So that is, something that we will deal with in a lot of these type of sprawl repair situations, especially malls, surface parking lots, anything like that. There's, going to be a need to put back green infrastructure and, green spaces and things that, again, reduce that urban heat island effect that, some of our student teams talked about, and take care of that stormwater runoff on site. So as a plan, you can see how this starts to lay out. We worked with the existing connectivity points on site to really create that strong east-west connection you can see moving through the site. And then really started to think about this as, kind of quadrants that could be developed with different programming. The city is, housing is a big issue, as it is in pretty much every community out there, I think. So, providing a diversity of housing types at a range of price points and affordability levels was key, as well as tapping into, some of the military and the kind of innovation culture that's happening in that area as well. We can move on to the next one. And yeah, these were the quadrants we looked at. So kind of the residential multifamily mixed use area down to number 2, ownership product for townhome developments and multifamily at number 1. 3 was more of a sports and recreation area. I mean, there is, kind of a lack of those type of community facilities in this part of Norfolk. So, starting to create these type of both private and publicly operated sports and entertainment facilities, and then also this kind of office and innovation facility there at number 4. And again, this was set up to be phased flexibly, depending on where the market would lead us. But, housing was definitely going to be key here. Go to the next one. Connectivity, we talked about that strategy, again, kind of building those connections through the site, starting to create that finer grain where there wasn't one before. And I think lastly is the open space strategy, where, this site, we looked at how to organize the site through kind of a variety or a collection of multiple open spaces with different characters, more of an urban plaza down there towards the lower left quadrant. That would serve as a transfer station for bus and light rail, the new light rail extension that would come through the site, and then a more softscape green space in the upper right quadrant in that sports and rec area. And really started to think about that loop, that can connect all of these spaces, within the project. So zooming back out, we look at context. I think the student teams all talked a lot about context and how we sensitively respond to what's adjacent and really stitch back into the community. with the townhomes here in the foreground, kind of stitching back into that residential neighborhood, and then creating a more how should I say it, a highway scale along Military Road with our bigger mixed-use buildings and entertainment venues along Military Trail. And I thought that was an interesting one, but one I want to talk a little bit more about today that's actually really near and dear to my heart is the Lower Hill District redevelopment in Pittsburgh, where I grew up. And this is probably a story that many of you on the call know, so we're not going to go too much into the history of it, but I think it's important to just set the context a little bit about, what these highways did to the city. And, it's not an uncommon story in many of our urban cities and neighborhoods, but this one was particularly egregious, and it's really exciting to be a part of the solution now that's fixing it. We can go to the next one, Chris. So the Lower Hill District, which, as I said, many of you may know, was a thriving neighborhood, 80,000 people, primarily African-American at the time, but very multicultural. It was, you probably heard Duke Ellington played there. It was, rivaled Harlem as the Black Broadway, and just a rich culture that really drove this neighborhood and drove the city. You can see the density of it there in the image on the left. And over top of that was the urban renewal plan drafted by the city in 1955 to put a brand new civic arena on that site and run some highways through there to connect downtown better to the suburbs. On the left, you can see some of that demolition of the site that happened and starting in about the mid-60s. And here you can kind of get a sense of what happened when all of that neighborhood was razed and all of those people were displaced, and the construction of the new arena taking shape. And the vision was to do a great modernist kind of towers in the park environment that never happened. If we go to the next slide, Chris. So this is what the site looked like about 20 years ago. You can see the arena, the big silver dome in the center, and about 20 acres of parking around it. And then the fabric of the Middle Hill and Upper Hill neighborhoods to the right of the page. And 579, the Crosstown Expressway that really severed this neighborhood from downtown and disconnected it for about 50 years. If we go to the next slide, a couple things that are interesting to point out here is the new arena. So about 13 years ago, the new arena was built just opposite of the existing site, which allowed that civic arena, barely 50 years old, to be demolished. And the overbuild happened, which I think is really the catalyst in all of this, and it's called the Cap Park. For reference, I've noted the Church of the Epiphany and all of these images. That was a historic Catholic church that has kind of survived this demolition and rebirth of the neighborhood here. But if we flip to the next slide, Chris, the Cap Park is that really critical piece of infrastructure that catalyzed this project. This was funded by an FTA Tiger grant, as well as through the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation, to deck over the highway in between those two parallel streets and develop it as a public park that forged that connection from downtown back to the Hill District. And on the right side of this image, you can see the first buildings of the Lower Hill District plan being implemented. Keep an eye on time here. We can kind of flip through these, but originally the city built on that plan, or built on that catalytic project of the CAP, and started a plan for that redevelopment of the site. The site was still controlled by the development rights were controlled by the Penguins, which was the hockey team. And also owned directly, though, by the city, by the Urban Redevelopment Authority. So there was a plan to plat it out into blocks and streets, largely starting to mimic the old street grid, but it wasn't quite the same. with that highway running through it, and many of the streets like Center Avenue to the south of the plan were realigned. We can move forward, Chris. Yeah, we can skip over that. It's really just looking at the three main streets that extend through the site. Center Avenue, which used to connect us directly to Pittsburgh. So as a redevelopment plan, there were three key components to this project. Wiley Avenue, which was the old main street of the Lower Hill District, now through the Cap Park could be connected directly back to downtown. And for the first time in 2 generations, families could walk from the Lower Hill all the way back to downtown. The second was Logan Street, crossing parallel here, or perpendicular to Wiley, which would link the new arena with a new public performance hall. So, you know, evoking the history of the neighborhood as a jazz and entertainment center, you know, we started to look at, you know, performance and arts and how all of these cultural aspects can find new life here on the site. And then the Center Avenue, which was to the south, which was the old commercial district or old commercial street, connecting directly to downtown again, could again find new life with office and mixed use along there. So those three elements helped us organize the site. And then that's how it started to come together, with Wiley Avenue imagined really as a green through connection. The original plans from the city intended to have it stop kind of at the south end into a park, but we looked at how that could be reconnected through pedestrian connectivity through a park. That park at the south is actually interesting because this whole site has a grade change of about 150 feet from top to bottom. So kind of from about where the bottom of that, where the Cap Park is to the top of the existing neighborhood fabric is about 150 feet. So it's a typical Pittsburgh neighborhood, what can I say? But that's how, you know, this park started to mediate that grade change through kind of a terraced stepping that could have different areas of for recreation, different programming within it. We can keep moving. Overall, there was, you know, an office component shown in blue. That building G, that first tower, that is completed. That's topped out now. We'll see a picture of that here shortly. The entertainment venue on Block E there in kind of the purple color, work is being started on that now. And the housing is also, you know, the funding is starting to come through to start to develop the housing, largely affordable housing product on the northern end of this as well. Yeah, just touching on that character, right? August Wilson, which many of you probably heard of, the famous playwright, was from the Lower Hill, from the Hill District. Teenie Harris was a photographer. As I said, you know, Granada Social Club, Crawford Grill. These were all the main entertainment venues and clubs and places that were really gave the Hill life. And you can see some of the pictures of the history there of when demolition started to happen. So the site was meant to kind of evoke that history, you know, and rethinking it as a, you know, a new mixed use development, and start to honor that memory, the folks who lived here, what's come before, and kind of pay homage to that through the development of the Cap Park, through public arts and activation along Wiley Avenue. And we've worked with Walter Hood of Hood Design Group, if anyone on the call is familiar with Hood. You know, they developed this project called Curtain Call, which is actual photos of all of the, I won't say all, but many of the families and displaced residents of the Lower Hill. They're all being incorporated into an art piece that'll be located along Wiley Avenue here to the north of the site. So with kiosks, local art, seating areas, all populating Wiley Avenue to, again, both physically and emotionally stitch this neighborhood back together. And just a couple images then of the park here as it was intended or as designed. You can kind of get a sense of the stepping that's starting to happen, looking directly up Wiley Avenue into the Hill District, with a new building, which is the first new skyscraper in Pittsburgh, I think, in probably over 20 years. We can go to the next one. And kind of that opposite view from the neighborhood, looking back down, again, understanding context and how, scale should be, that we're breaking down scale to, more seamlessly transition from the existing neighborhood down Wiley. But you can get a sense of that 150-foot drop when you stand at the top of the hill and look back towards the Cap and downtown here. Next one. And just an overview of the vision of the project. Again, highlighting Wiley Avenue as that central piece to the site, linking us back to the Cap Park at the center of this image, all the way downtown. And you can see the festival venue and the kind of the activity happening in the center of this, all to re-enliven something here that was just a parking lot not more than 10 years ago. And phase one is the first building that's come into play, is topped out, is open for business, and the first phase of the park is completed as well now too. So that terracing, that stepping that we looked at in the rendering, starting to move down towards the Cap and the highway is all been completed. And we're really looking forward to the next phases of this project starting to come out of the ground.
I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to turn my video on if I can. Okay, great. Thank you, Chris, and thank you to the students. We'd like to open up the questioning now, and if you have any questions, Christine is monitoring the chat, so we'd love to hear your thoughts. To kick things off, I have a couple of questions. First, I'd like to direct this to the University of Texas team. So if the panelists can, if everybody can turn on your video, so we can answer the questions and sort of have a dialogue about the topic. So when you were looking at the neighborhood context, and you did a nice job of sort of capturing the history, how did that inform, particularly around the edges? What were some of the things that you were thinking about in terms of reconnecting the neighborhood? Would you like to offer some thoughts on that?
I can
go ahead.
So there were a lot of things we thought about when we were looking at the edges. The first one was to do a mapping of the existing community nodes that exist, schools, what kind of housing typologies exist, the demographic study. And the second layer was the street network and the street grid. So we sort of loosely measured what the block size is and if that's walkable or not. And then we just sort of did like a Google map walk around of what the neighborhood feels like. And then we sort of looked at some of the harder edges where we had the Department of Transportation building on the south side. And then we had the stadium on the northeast. So there were, all of the edges were sort of very different from each other in terms of how that cross section would look like when our site would meet the edge of what happens across the street. And then we sort of did a study of what kind of program could become a threshold for that particular edge on the site, because it wasn't something that there wasn't one solution to put for all of the edges, because they were all very unique in character. And I think that was the starting point. Tess, if you had something to add.
Yeah, I think that was great. I think also just looking at the existing context and then the community vision, which was to wrap the north-south corridor to the east, and instead choosing to do it to the west. And that was really to connect the existing context too of the proposed stadium district master plan, and even if not, just the existing grid there and the amenities there, as well as the floodplain in the center. So just like really paying attention to the things that the community wanted, but also those assets that were there on site and at the border of the site.
So when you were doing that though, did you look at sort of the architecture, the scale of because it's sort of, there's different typologies around the site. Did that influence sort of your strategy around the blocks, the sort of the neighborhood structure?
Yeah. So one thing was for sure that we wanted a walkable grid size. And we felt like using the existing street grid and to bring that into the site as a starting point to lay out our street grid was a good step one. And then the second thing that you talked about was the urban form. And we felt like there was a typological diversity on the neighborhood to the northwest. I think we saw townhouses and mixed use, less mixed use, but more residential units that were ground plus three structures. And so we felt like there was definitely some density to work with. And we felt like uh, we also wanted to replicate, sort of emulate that type of typological diversity in terms of live work units, townhouses, mid-rise to low-rise to mid-rise to the northeast where we had our mixed-use street. And a lot of our typologies in terms of urban form directly related to the street types that we had. So the first thing we did was to designate a street typology. What is the function of the street at this particular place on site? Is it a mixed-use street or is it a neighborhood street? And after we laid that out, we then put in the urban form in terms of the setback that we would need to be able to have that kind of height in relation to the street.
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to throw this to Matt, Cameron, and Oliver. Actually, if I can share, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I'm going to try that again. Talk to us a bit more about how you see leveraging ecological assets. So do you want to sort of speak to this? And I was really curious about how you sort of thought about daylighting, because the environmental issues were very important to this site. So talk a little bit more about how you see, I'm particularly interested in the word leverage. So talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. That's a great question. I would say that the sort of experience of living in Denver is really defined by this sort of generally well-connected open space system that you see diagrammed in the corner here. And so we were really viewing the site, the core area, as this missing link between Sloan's Lake Park, which is a sort of man-made, very large lake in West Denver that has sort of been a neighborhood hub for a very long time, with the broader South Platte River Valley and the Greenway system that's developed around it. And also this gulch system that flows in off of the foothills down from the Rockies and into the South Platte. And so it was a discovery for us, sort of digging into the stormwater management plan for the neighborhood and seeing that there is this undersized Sloan's Lake drainage way that flows right underneath the cloverleaf currently. And it's in need of flood protection improvements, gets backed up, handling the sort of capacity during heavy rainfall events. And there has been historic flooding along Lakewood Gulch that has claimed lives before. And so I would say this was sort of the driving move that we wanted to leverage, and acknowledging that we were daylighting this drainage way, but it's actually not a historic creek that was buried like you might find elsewhere. It is just sort of underground infrastructure, and that also gave us the freedom to sort of align a greenway with the traditional grid that we were reintroducing and the sort of human scale blocks that we thought made sense to sort of weave it through and sort of create more urban density along it through that process. And so I would say that was the sort of armature that we were leveraging. And then around that, looked at enhancing urban canopy around the sort of green streets, creating riparian buffers to filter pollutants. But all of this is really sort of building off of the great natural landscape that Denver has, and could sort of continue to restore and reintroduce to a sort of a site like this that's really defined by sprawl, as we've touched on.
Yeah, it was pretty shocking being in Denver how few street trees there are. So I
Yeah.
think sort of growing the greenery towards this area is also important. I'm going to stop sharing. And let's go to, I wanted
Chris?
to ask one more question. Matt, did you have any additional comments, or Cameron, on that question?
I was just gonna say quickly too that I mean, from like a 30,000 foot view too, we were thinking about, with all these different challenges, how we can turn them into new assets too. And so like gathering up the stormwater to make it a new community amenity. And, you know, using this also as an opportunity to think about urban forestry and reducing that, you know, current heat island effect. And then also how that ties in with our programming and things like that, which can be flexible along that. But
Great point. Okay, I'm going to go back to Texas and ask you a question about this. I thought this was one of your most successful drawings. But my question is, a single-loaded, commercial street tends to struggle. So how did you sort of justify this being your main street, as opposed to, the street over to the west? Why did you think this was important, to sort of, as it's sort of on the edge of the development? So tell us a little bit more why you're thinking around, that this is becoming your main commercial street.
The idea to put the mixed-use street or the commercial street on that side was to cater to the stadium and the stadium district plan that was part of our research in the initial stages, where we felt like if there were any economic intensity to come, it would be from the east. And so we felt like that if that were to come, and if the stadium were to become another redevelopment project, that would have been an easy plug-in to the mixed-use street on our site. And so that would enable a seamless connection between two redevelopment projects. Because if we felt like if we had put a neighborhood connector street over there, that may have become a point of disconnect between future developments to the adjacent of our project.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that, when a lot of times when people sort of look at these sites, they put all the activity in the middle, and so you're almost creating barriers to the other neighborhoods. So, it's almost that you're almost turning it inside out and saying, let's make our edges stronger and integrate with the adjacent and almost appear as if it, was always there, right? As opposed to sort of creating a new town center. It's really more about strategically, if you will, healing and reestablishing, redeveloping. Okay.
Yeah, edge treatments are just as important, I think, as what happens in the center, Chris. I mean, it's a really good point. I mean, like in the Lower Hill project, the Center Avenue spine that we indicated there in that orange diagram. I mean, that was again something that was meant to, kind of create that edge, but bring people in, right, and kind of draw you in from the existing neighborhood as well. So it was kind of highlighting the old, commercial character of that street, but and then it gives you an opportunity to have different types of retailers, different types of tenants, some that might want to be more internally located to the site, and also those that want to be, on the external. So there's some flexibility then too in how it becomes ultimately leased out and developed.
Yeah, and to that point, Chris, I think I want to share this version. So it was the street grid. It appeared that there was an early, when did you come involved, I guess? Because here we're seeing a street grid that's being reestablished. Was that part of your work, or was that earlier work? And then once again, interestingly, you kind of put the main street on the edge of the development. Not coincidentally, perhaps, as we saw in Denver, sort of putting it where there's an activity center. So tell us a little bit about when you all came into this and what was your sort of your scope?
So, yeah, it's a good question. I mean, the city, once the arena was demolished, the old site had started under that plan, right? There was, I think about 2012, 2013, now that I remember, was when all of this started to really start moving. And the plan was developed to create these 6 major blocks, right, that you can kind of see. To restore Wiley Avenue at the center and, bring it down through the site. At that point, there wasn't really a development partner though, to kind of to start to bring this to fruition. I think a few different, the city had started to kind of shop this around, put it out, but we got involved in probably about 2018 when the Penguins, the sports team, the hockey team, partnered with a development group to kind of take over the development of the site, I should say. And, in that case, of course, they brought some of their thinking with it, what they needed to do to generate enough revenue, right, to build this site out. And they brought their own financing plan with it, which, was a little bit different, I think, than what the city had initially intended. So we worked with the city at that point, with the planning department, to kind of complete that lower part of the site, right? If you can see where it says FNB Tower, obviously the road work and the infrastructure hadn't gone in there yet. So there was an opportunity to kind of work out that area and then work within the existing blocks that had already been platted out, so to speak.
Yeah, so what's interesting is that it was almost like they were asking you that Wiley become another typical street, but you really took that in a different direction.
Right. So we thought that, again, given the prominence and the cultural impact and history of that street, that it needed to be something special. And, we promoted or suggested taking a little bit more of the right of way to create kind of a green pedestrian street through here. It would be, there'd be car access, I think, up to that point, that was already built out. But then once you got past Logan Street there, right where your cursor is, it would become this that stepping terraced park that would bring you down to the cap. Also, I mean, there was just a lot of, I think there was a, how should I say it? The demand wasn't there to build quite as dense as the city had envisioned in this area. So, I think we had to think through how we, what's the best way to give back at this point, and, creating this kind of multi-tiered park that could also be used for watch parties or gatherings or, events for, for the Penguins, right, for the sports team. I mean, again, it's sort of how that area was envisioned.
And has this been well received by the community?
I think there's always going to be, disagreement on certain aspects, but overall it's been largely successful. I should say the Penguins and the development team worked very closely with the Lower Hill CDC. So they had already established what they called a CSIP, or a community collaboration implementation plan, where the community organization had put down really their demands and what they needed to see happen for any of this to for any of this to happen, really, to come through. And this development partner and the Penguins have worked very closely with them. To the developers of the residential buildings to the north. They're local. One guy grew up in the Hill District. His father was Councilman Salahuddin, who was really well known in that area and in Pittsburgh, kind of back in the 80s. And and any of these large projects are not going to be completed by a single developer. So there's always rooms for partnership, especially with local and smaller developers to kind of partner and make these things happen.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to now ask Christine to share some of the questions from the chat. And if you've thought of questions, please go ahead and type those in the chat. Christine, do you want to come back on and share those questions with our panel? Thank you.
Sounds good. The first question is for Despina. And I saw that you answered that in the chat, and that's fine, but I just want everyone to know. So your graphics are beautiful. What software did you use? Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I had already answered it, but I was going to say for data collection, we really relied on programs like GIS, and then the data sets like from the Census Bureau to get that information. And then we did all of our modeling through Rhino, but to actually create the visualizations, we really relied on Adobe Photoshop and Illustrator just to get the representations that you all saw. But thank you for the compliment too.
Great. I feel like this question might be for Chris with a C. How will parking be accommodated for the arena now? I think that's a you question.
That sounds like a me question. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good question. So, you know, for one thing, the city had a goal to reduce parking on the site. There is a garage that's being provided underneath the music venue that was shown in the diagrams there. And that's going to be close to 1,000 cars. I mean, I think I remember, I think I actually trying to remember exactly, but it's around about 1,000 cars. So there'll be some parking provided on site for the venues, but largely the city is trying to encourage people to take transit. So they're providing parking at different locations, remote or removed from the site, along bus and the light rail line. So they call it the T in Pittsburgh, and it goes right by there's a station right at the bottom of the Cap Park. So the idea really is to get people to park remotely if they're driving in, and then take the T to the Cap Park and, you know, walk up to the arena. So it's largely a distributed strategy, you know, I think, and there's plenty of garages downtown so that, you know, at night are empty, and you know, those garage owners, you know, let you park there for $5, and you know, it's really not an issue, and it's, I think, much better use for that site than all of that parking that used to be there.
Thank you. Next question. Can each of you describe the extent of public engagement or input on your projects, if you had any? I know for the students, maybe not. So Chris with a C, if you want to kick us off, maybe, and if students are able to chime in with their projects, feel free.
So, I mean, the Lower Hill project was, again, just an amazing collaboration. Our group, you know, I think one of the things that we learned early on is that you have to, when you're the development team, when you're the Penguins, when you're the architects, planners coming in, you can't do this alone. And from the beginning, it was about developing partnerships. It was about working with folks like Bomani House that I mentioned, the developer a few minutes ago. We went and they hired a guy named Kevin Acklin, who used to be the chief of staff to the prior mayor. So somebody that actually had, you know, some good political clout still, and connectivity through throughout the process to kind of manage the development. And who knew really what, you know, what the levers were, and, you know, what the hot button issues were going to be with people. And, you know, the team had already been doing extensive community engagement before this project even started, just as, you know, you know, it's their neighborhood, right? You know, and so there's been a relationship over time that's built. It's gone up and down, you know. I think, honestly, when you're a disadvantaged community and you see promises that are never fulfilled, I mean, you tend to lose trust with the people that are making them. So I think throughout this process, it was important to continue to have regular meetings, regular town hall meetings. The team and the actual the developers, the contractors, can't even think of the right word, contractors. There was a large workforce development program that was put into place. And, I think, I'm trying to remember exactly, but there's been about, over the past couple of years, maybe about $5 million in contracts given to MWBE businesses, especially those located within and proximate to the Hill. So there is just a larger network of, there's so many nuances to this project and how it's been developed and brought about over time. I'd love to get into them all, but it's, it's to the question, there's been extensive community engagement. There's been hard promises that have been made and kept with this community in terms of job placement and expected revenue that will be put back into the community and places for local businesses to set up shop when this is all complete. That said, there were, again, a number of, you can go to the website lowerhill.com. You can kind of follow all of the community engagement that's been happening going back about 5 or 6 years now at this point. Everything is documented and publicly available. So does that answer the question, I suppose? Okay.
Yeah, and Christine, may I want to jump in before we put the students on the spot, because one of the things that we did when we wrote the prompt is we said very explicitly, do not contact the community.
Mm-hmm.
And don't start knocking on doors, because you can imagine how confusing it would be for a neighborhood leader to hear from 20 different teams. So what we really rely on with the competition, at least, is the work that the city has done in advance. So last year in Minneapolis, they had done a lot of interviews, a lot of sort of stakeholder working with local businesses and residents. And in that case, that was only about a mile from where George Floyd was killed. So there's a lot of heavy issues. Here, the city of Denver had done some extensive community outreach. And it would be wonderful to sort of get their reactions to these, but in fairness to the students, we really asked them to rely on what found information they could. So maybe, Harvard, Texas, you guys can speak to what you uncovered in your research.
Yeah, thanks for that framing, Chris. We did draw upon the sort of prior engagement efforts that were led by the West Colfax Business Improvement District in collaboration with Colorado Department of Transportation, which owns the site, and the city of Denver. And they had done a variety of really amazing pop-up engagement events actually in the Cloverleaf, envisioning what could be there in the interim and longer term in the future. And a lot of that was documented in the Over the Colfax Clover report. So we took cues from that and really made sure to sort of align our project principles with the community aspirations that were established in that work. And in particular, I think a driving move behind our design was seeing that the community preferred option for the site was to maintain the existing overpass, take a sort of infrastructure reuse approach, and convert it into a linear park. And so given that thus far has been the sort of community preferred direction, we sort of looked at that as a starting point for how we could think about this new Corky Gonzalez walk in that way, drawing from past engagement.
I'll just add quickly too, there was CDOT, as they've been unrolling their Federal Avenue bus rapid transit construction. They've been doing a lot of community engagement, community meetings, and many of those are, there's summary reports, they're on YouTube. So we went through a lot of those too to hear, what the planners were talking about, but also then what community concerns were coming up. Something else, the West Area Plan, which was adopted in March 2023, there's a lot of engagement around that as well. And that's included in the West Area Plan. And so we were able to, and then there's also, history of public meetings and things like that too. So we were able to use a lot of that to incorporate as well. And then the final piece I'll put too is that Denver applied for a Connecting Communities grant from the Biden administration. And that application also highlighted a number of different pieces and stakeholders that really, gave a pretty broad picture. Like Chris said, that there's been so much engagement done. It's to the point of almost fatigue. There's so much information out there.
Despina or Kuntz, do you have any additional comments?
Yeah, we likewise took inspiration from that engagement, specifically the different scenarios that were laid out in the neighborhood connection scenario, which in that one, the main priorities that were really pointed out were doing something about the north-south connector and creating an on-grade intersection. And that's something that we aim to create on our site. Another component of that was the flood mitigation strategy of having that linear park system and just adding green space to the area. So although we don't necessarily confine exactly to what the community prescribed as their vision, we take the aspects of it, especially the on-grade intersection, prioritizing the pedestrian realm as an inspiration for our design. And Kunt, I don't know if you want to add anything, but
Yeah, I just wanted to add and say that the document itself, the process of the community engagement and the way, the comprehensive way that all of that was laid out in terms of the pros and cons for each of the scenarios that the communities went through, definitely helped us sort of understand uh, what kind of scenarios they had in mind, and definitely helped us draw from some of those ideas.
Great. Next, this is an interesting question, and the question is first, did you take fire risk into consideration during design? And I'll pause while you're thinking to say that we actually have a couple of webinars on that that are fairly new. I think there's 2 or 3 of them, and they were last year in 2024. And honestly, some of them are really fascinating. And it was, a lot of hazard mitigation sort of things, but with the buildings themselves and density and, how to help with that, to reduce fire risk. But anything from this group on fire risk and design?
I'll just quickly say, I think, one of the things we considered, because we have this mostly pedestrianized street running through the middle of our design, the core, which is the pedestrianized overpass. And that all is designed to be accessible to emergency vehicles and also serve as a bypass for emergency vehicles if there's, some sort of accident at the intersection. And so there was thought throughout of, having all of these be accessible with wide enough streets that can accommodate these kind of vehicles.
And I would just add that in terms of thinking about fire management itself, it's definitely a very important design consideration, like working in the context of Colorado. I think especially if you were to be in a sort of wildlands urban interface on the further edges of Denver, I would say working just a few minutes from downtown, it wasn't sort of a primary environmental factor that went into our thinking, but I think it would definitely need to be thought about seriously when it comes to how you're siting buildings and thinking about plant selection and other things like that.
I would just echo that and add that in our design, we made sure that the building form had maximum street frontage and we had optimum setbacks that would allow for emergency vehicles to pass through and get access to all sides of the buildings. That was definitely a part of consideration. And then making sure that maneuverability of those vehicles was also not hindered by the building form itself. So easy access.
Next one, and this may or may not be our last question here, but we'll do this question and round you all out here. So the question is, it seems that redevelopment efforts seem to be dominated by large developers. Are there strategies for getting small landowners to be able to develop the properties so that the benefits and wealth generated from redevelopment is distributed locally throughout the community? So again, we know that large developers do tend to dominate the landscape. Are there strategies for encouraging or, even through whatever method, economic development, zoning, whatever that might be, to encourage small landowners to develop their properties.
I can take an initial stab at this. I think it's a pretty difficult question, and it comes into, it's a lot easier in a situation like this where it's publicly owned land and they have that ability, right, to parcel it out. In terms of our design, we sought to break it up into these, there's still a lot of 5-story buildings, but they're all broken up. So there is that option, because we were thinking we didn't want it to be this kind of mega development that's really do or die with these really big buildings, and that a lot of these can cross-subsidize other ones. At the top of our site, we also have some missing middle typologies with townhomes, and those also could be broken into smaller parcels for smaller developers, and maybe paired with different parcels in order to cross-subsidize. But I think it's a really important question, and we've been thinking about that too in our curriculum, just in terms of how you can support community developers with these sites.
And I think it would also boil down to mechanisms like community benefits agreements and anti-displacement policies to really ensure that the sort of wealth that's generated is staying in the Colfax core in our case, but also that it's not displacing surrounding residents, which is a big issue in Denver right now, especially in the West area.
Yeah, I think you guys hit it on the head. I mean, the community benefits agreements are key to this. I mean, it's really where, the public can hold the developer accountable for, what they promise and, what they want to get out of this. So, I mean, it's actually lowerhilldevelopment.com. I think I would suggest everybody take a look at that. You can read the CSIP agreement. It's very interesting, kind of what's been done over the past few years there. And I think the diversity of product type is an interesting point to make as well, that, in a project, particularly like the one in Norfolk that I presented, you have a variety. Again, it's 90 acres. One person's not going to do all of that themselves. And, there are townhomes, as you mentioned, there are multifamily buildings, there's office, there is opportunity, like you said, to kind of create smaller parcels that allow these smaller product types to be developed. And, so I think, if you're really just looking at doing a bunch of office buildings, which, I mean, let's be real, nobody's doing that anymore. I think there's a lot of opportunity just through the program mix, really, to open up these sites to a range of developers. So.
I think also tying to our project, we didn't mention this, but a big concern that we found in the community was the lack of healthcare and also food security for residents. So making urban farming, which I think is really complementable to small lot sizes, was a really important thing that we thought about, and also tying that to things like live-work units, and then the types of ownership models like community land trust, which just allows different community organizations and partnerships with that urban farming to own portions of the land and lease to residents for other community needs you might have. I think thinking of those more unique ways of ownership to give back to the community, but also allow them to maintain the land and give community benefit is a really important thing looking into the future.
Wonderful. Well done, everyone. This was great. I really enjoyed this.
Right?
The future is bright. And I said this when we were kind of flipping through some of the slides, getting ready for today's session, and I saw just all these fabulous photos and imagery and graphics, and I loved every bit of it. And the future is bright. So thank you all for joining, and congratulations to our almost graduates as of tomorrow. Holy moly, good luck. And the Urban Design and Preservation Division, thank you for bringing this talent to our webinar series. We appreciate you. Folks, we are recording the session. It'll be up on our YouTube channel on Monday. Don't forget to register for upcoming sessions at ohioplanning.org/planning webcast. And don't forget to log those CM credits if you are my AICP friends in need. That is it for today. Everyone have a great weekend, and we'll talk next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you
Bye.
all.
Thank you.